Oh boy, I know it's early in the season and Villa's probably a long way from humming, as we know they can. Having a come-from-behind win like that can be so helpful to us in terms of a confidence and belief and reference standpoint. And to have that happen this early in the season, to start a very demanding and challenging month, bodes well. Brought to you by my exemplary sponsors, 24/7 Services. It's time to review Villa 3, Everton 2. Welcome inside the parlor, where I'm feeling a tremendous sense of relief in clawing those 3 points back to start a very busy and important week for us. And some really interesting statistical milestones were achieved, like Ollie Watkins bypassed Dwight York with his second goal. Goal number 61 in Claret and Blue. Second all-time now to just Gabby, who he's going to try to reel in over the next season and a half. Everton became the first Premier League side since Bournemouth in 1992 to lose consecutive games after scoring the first 2 goals. And how about John Duran? 4 league games, 3 game-winning goals, 7 goals for Villa as a substitute, and second in the league in minutes per goals. Who would have even imagined that 2 months ago? I call it the Holy Trinity Show because, of course, of Trinity Road and the Trinity Road stand. And Trinity also means 3. So the 3 key issues or moments that defined Villa 3, Everton 2. Senior correspondent Samir Gaby was on hand filing footage for us in what must have been a very uncomfortable game to watch at times, but in the end, a thriller for the neutrals, and the home fans went home happy. The key numbers, I thought very predictable, frankly, but not necessarily representative of the suffering Villa had to experience through large parts of that first half, especially trailing 2-0. High XG again, a great shot ratio of almost 2-1, which is what you want or better. Tidy pass completion and successful dribbles were my extra statistic. And once again, even without Leon Bailey, we were able to drive the ball effectively past opponents at times. On that note, this might have been the second game in a row where Morgan Rogers may be scrutinized for some of the decisions he made in critical moments, and I'm sure the technical team will review that with him during video sessions where there simply is no place to hide. Maybe it was making the incorrect pass, or not making a pass when he should have, or trying to beat that extra man. It's one of those things that happens to young players. It's a process that he has to go through. Maybe the biggest error was not putting the right shape on the ball in the 62nd minute that could have led to Ollie Watkins' hat trick. Afterwards, Ollie gave Morgan an earful. In fact, there were many examples of Villa teammates giving each other the gears a little bit and asking for some accountability, which is a sign that the standards are higher now. Rogers had a fantastic chance to tie the game earlier after a through ball from Lamar Bogard, and I think he will regret upon video review the decision to go for power rather than cunning placement towards the back post. And I also wonder if a more in-form and up-to-speed Jacob Ramsey might have tried to find a way to, hit that rebound first time. But I'm picking nits here. It is coming for these two eventually, and we're going to see it, I think, relatively soon. Big moment, the somewhat ironic opening goal, which was Everton's first at Villa Park in the Premier League since Romelu Lukaku in 2016, and as great as Amadou Onana has been since he's joined us. He has to be stronger here, and he didn't get the greatest ball played to him either, but Dwight McNeil strips him of it way too easily. This is not a foul. This is Onana not being strong enough, not taking a foul or even a card if he has to, and frankly, a guy of Onana's stature should literally be eating players like Dwight McNeil for lunch and then just spitting out the bones right there on the field. On a related note, and I think actually a significant moment in the context of this game, but the halftime introduction of Ross Barkley, another ex-Toffee, in a game that had many players with cross-club connections. Now, this could have been interpreted many different ways, like, was Onana being dragged at halftime because of his role in the 1-0 goal or the knock he took there? And for a second time, was Unai Emery concerned that Sean Dyche had a book on him and perhaps knew of his vulnerabilities? Was he being saved for Tuesday? And I don't want to really pile on the guy because he's been good for us, but he was very ineffective for Belgium in midweek. As for Ross Barkley's performance, very tidy and effective again. I guess Unai Emery must have felt at halftime we didn't need brawn in the middle of the park. We needed nous. And Ross Barkley provided that for us again and made huge contributions. I think as every week goes by, we're going to appreciate more and more what a shrewd and cost-effective signing this was, because he completed 41 of 42 passes, 4 out of 4 long balls, created a chance, and recovered the ball 3 times. Ross Barkley was incisive in his time. Minor issue, Lamar Bogard and Jaden Philogene still kind of make me a little bit nervous when they're on, and fair play to Bogard. He went the distance again, and obviously he's been asked to be far more conservative than Cash, Nedeljkovic, or his left-sided counterparts, for example. So fair play to him going 90 minutes and, being relatively unscathed. Philogene, though, I wish he could come on when we have a more comfortable lead because, at West Ham and in this game, he looks panicky sometimes in his own defensive third. And again, he gave a foul away that he really didn't need to and against a team you don't want to. And he also got an earful from Emi Martinez for a very ill-advised back pass. Big issue number 3, Calvert-Lewin lethality. Well, he didn't have enough of it. Now, the 2-0 goal was quite a shock to the Villa Park system, even though deep down inside, I think we all did think in the back of our minds that Villa was capable of clawing its way back into that game. The set-piece goal, though, not a surprise. What a ball by Dwight McNeil to go along with his goal. But after this, Calvert-Lewin had 2 glorious chances to score again, and Villa can count themselves very lucky that he wasn't ruthless in either of them. The first one came in minute 54. What a great situation this was, and the fact that he didn't score comes down to, I think, partially Emi Martinez staying patient and staying big, but also Ezri Konsa not giving up on the play either. That would have been quite a spectacular own goal had he tucked that into the corner. But we got away with it. And then in minute 78, just after Duran scored, Calvert-Lewin is in almost the exact same position again. This time, he rattles it off the crossbar. Everton have yet to register a point through 4 games again this season. If Calvert-Lewin takes one of those 2 chances, we might be talking about something very different right now. Then again, does this individual strike you as someone who is a prolific penalty area predator? Not really. Maybe just predator. Big issue number 2, Ollie on target. Oh, thank goodness. And we now know for certain that there has been some kind of nagging issue that's hampered Ollie Watkins since the Euros this summer. He said after the game, I'm not 100%, but I am getting closer. And despite that, he got 2 goals in this game. And when you add the 2 glorious chances against Arsenal and some of the ones that fell his way at West Ham and Leicester, he really could have 5 or 6 goals by now, and he's hampered by something. And the most important thing, I've said it before, so has Unai Emery, he's getting into those glorious positions in the penalty area. He was bound to score eventually. Boy, did Ollie Watkins have a couple of chances to increase his bounty in this game. The first one was very similar to the one he missed against Arsenal, that first one, which he just kind of scuffed wide of Pickford. But I think the second one that I alluded to earlier was the best chance, and that just came down to Morgan Rogers not quite laying it on a platter for him as he was wide open in the goal mouth. I'll say it again. If he's not getting into those high XG areas the way he has been, well, then we could be worried. But he is getting to those areas. It's just a matter of connecting now. Ollie's first, the 1-2 goal, really could have been a candidate for the number one moment in this show and from the game, because if we didn't get that then, the longer it went on, the more Everton might have dug in and the more uncomfortable it might have been for us. Now, credit to Amadou Onana, who really played a beautiful ball to open up Luca Digne, and that really did precipitate this goal. I'll say it for the 100th time already this season. Luca Digne has been sublime for us already this season. And yes, he was one of the candidates who legitimately might have been moved on in the summer simply because of his wage packet and his age. You have to think about those things. Overhead must come into the equation when you're the hierarchy, when you're building a squad. But thank goodness he didn't move on. He's happy with us. He has performed incredibly, and maybe that's partially because of the fact he has intensive competition for his place right now in the form of Ian Maatsen. Luca Digne just stands this ball up perfectly. Think about it. He had to get the perfect lift on the ball in order that it goes over Pickford's head, and he had to get the right range to try to get it to a teammate. He does both perfectly, as he always seems to, like he did at Leicester for John Duran. And I wonder, is he playing the ball into an area hoping somebody will latch on, or did he see Ollie Watkins making his way to the edge of the six and he played it to him the way he's going right now? I think he knew exactly what was going to happen. And Ollie Watkins versus Michael Keane aerial duel would seem to be very favorable for the Aston Villa striker, but he still has to do the business. If you're Sean Dyche, you are gutted about the battle level from your central defender, who probably should have done much better under the circumstances. And wasn't it weird? I mean, all this talk about Ollie Watkins not having scored, missing sitters against Arsenal, and he finally does in front of the Holt end. No joy, barely any celebration at all for Ollie, simply because of the irritating circumstances that preceded it. I mean, if that had been the 1-0 goal in front of the Holt end, it would have had a completely different and joyous vibe to it. If the 1-2 goal was somehow muted given the circumstances, well, then the 2-2 goal completely changed the complexion of this game on its head. Suddenly, Villa Park was alive again. The players in claret had belief, and every man wearing white was like, uh-oh, here we go again. And interestingly, on this goal, the ball was played in the direction of Luca Digne, who looked very much offside. Jack Harrison wasn't to know for sure, so he decides to make a play on it, which was, in the end, the wrong decision. And from this location in the box, it was very encouraging to see the old Ollie Watkins composure return. Yes, the Ollie Watkins ruthlessness we've come to know and love from past seasons, where he had a quick glance up to see where his international teammate was before planting it in the open side. The first two of many, I predict. And it was also predictable that the striker was moaning after the game about not getting the match ball because he couldn't complete the hat trick, and he had a couple of very good chances to do so. Paul and his 24/7 services team have been hopping busy of late with a lot of contract maintenance work for some of his bigger clients, like the co-op chain of grocery stores. And oftentimes this kind of work has to be done at night, so it's not disruptive, hence the name 24/7 services. But this is also the time of year when people are battening down the hatches and where roof repairs and replacements become very, very popular because of the oncoming weather, which we know is coming. So if you have a project like that, you probably should get in line and call early, because roofing is what 24/7 Services does best. In fact, the company was founded on the roof, despite the fact that Paul's actually slightly afraid of heights, ironically. If you need an emergency service, I've put the numbers in the description of this video. If it's a non-emergency project, the best way to get a hold of them is through the website and the Contact Us form. And the number one big moment that defined Villa 3, Everton 2, another Duran decider. Where do we even start at this point? I mean, at this moment in time, it is far more likely to me that John Duran gets offered a bumper new contract rather than him, say, leaving the club in an upcoming transfer window. And I think that comes down entirely to A, the diplomacy by our footballing hierarchy, but also a complete change in Duran's outlook. And it was rather ironic that while Duran was scoring an absolute stonker to win the game, Cameron Archer had his penalty saved by Andre Onana while the game was still 0-0 with United. 3 game-winning goals out of 4 games. A minutes-to-goal ratio of 86.4, which is second in the Premier League only behind Erling Haaland, and 7 goals now for Aston Villa as a substitute. But it was the quality and, frankly, audacity of this goal that had everybody buzzing after, because we're in week 4 and this is already a legitimate candidate for Goal of the Year winner. However, as important as this goal was in the context of getting a win, I mean, this is a huge 3 points for Aston Villa given the circumstances. There were other components and details of John Duran's game on Saturday that will make Unai Emery very, very happy. One thing I really noticed in this game when Duran came on was just the tenacity with which he hunted the ball down and his pressing in general, something we hadn't seen earlier in the Leicester game. You know, we were 2-0 up, so maybe the urgency wasn't there from him, not in this game. And he's all arms and legs. So when he's coming at you, there's a lot of inertia behind a very big human being. And also, crucially, he won a little duel just before scoring. And this was essential in keeping Villa in possession. Sometimes, you know, you got to win a duel. You got to get your nose dirty. Sometimes you're going to get kicked in the process. And so all of these things together are a very good sign for the big Colombian. As for the technique, which is fascinating, the best view is from behind Duran, because here you can see how he kind of torques his body and uncoils almost like a snake. The velocity of your shot is dependent on how fast your leg swings through. He has very little backlift though, which is interesting. And the power is generated by your glute muscle, your butt. His contact is perfect, and he almost hits it at the side because he is trying to generate the bend. And incredibly, all this happens in a split second after just having the tiniest of glances up. I've said on past shows, he always knows where the goal is. He always knows where the goalkeeper is, but he still has to get all of those things correct in a split second. But if nobody's going to close him down, well, this happens. Also, it should be noted that Duran scored while playing with Ollie Watkins in this configuration. Ironic, because Unai Emery addressed that during his weekly presser, saying that when they'd played together in the past, it hadn't really worked out for them. Well, Morgan Rogers moved over to the left, and Watkins and Duran were either a 1-1 or a 2. They scored the goal. Maybe this will lead to more collabs in the future. Another positive sign from Saturday. And the best reaction to a game-winning goal by John Duran goes to Emiliano Martinez, the world's number 1, of course. The Sill Hill Brewery star performer was Ollie Watkins. I mean, we needed somebody in this match to separate the wheat from the chaff, so I'm pouring Ollie a North Star hopped porter because he hopped over Michael Keane for the first goal, and he was lovingly composed for the second, and he wasn't even bitter about missing out on his hat trick, just like this rich porter using dehusked grains. You too can enjoy a North Star hopped porter responsibly at the Sill Hill Brewery Tap Room in Aston, just like these handsome gentlemen here before the game against Everton. But seriously, we should be packing this place out given the quality and the pricing of Sill Hill's creations. And when you go there, like you should before the Wolves game, you'll be supporting the show. Let's tabulate some of the compounding categories that I like to follow throughout the season. And you know, I'm thinking, should it be the combined goals between Watkins and Bailey, or should it be between our strikers? Watkins and Duran. It, I'm changing it. It's going to be the combined goals between Watkins and Duran because it looks a whole lot better at 5. Now, it's too early in the season to get wound up about any of these figures, but the one thing that does bother me and make me wonder is, why is it so hard to keep a clean sheet these days? I mean, ever since the second half of last year, after New Year, it has been very, very difficult. Does that have something to do with Boubacar Kamara, who is back in training with the squad? We shall see, but I would love to see that drought end very soon. And now, our first preview of a league opponent this season, as we take on Young Boys in Bern at the Wankdorf Stadion. And by the way, just a little bit of advice, don't Google Young Boys and Wankdorf, or you're bound to get some very dodgy emails. Now, what I find incredible about this opponent is that in terms of transfer values, Aston Villa is worth 10 times as much as Young Boys. And incredibly, despite the fact that they qualified for the Champions League, they are currently 12th out of 12 in the Swiss Super League after a putrid start to the season. They were involved on Saturday in cup play, but it took goals very late in the game to win at what would be considered a minnow, even by Swiss terms. Now, I don't want to come off sounding entitled or even greedy here, but when you look at the situation, you have to feel pretty positive about the possibility of going and getting all 3 points. And yes, I know there are no easy games in the Champions League, and the Conference League taught us that even teams that are valued well below us can cause all sorts of trouble. And yes, it's not the greatest time to lose both Cash and Bailey, but you know Unai Emery and his video analysis team will have put together a comprehensive game plan for Tuesday, and internally, I bet my bottom dollar that they will be expecting to win this game. I feel like Tuesday is going to be surreal somehow, not just as a milestone for this current regime, but a reward for our efforts last year in achieving Champions League football. And then we have Wolves in on Saturday. I mean, a huge 3-game week to start September, and what a monstrous way to start that week with a come-from-behind win against poor old Everton, a team that hasn't beat us since we've returned to the Premier League, and with a stonker of a game-winning goal, no less, and also after an international break, which can sometimes be awkward and uneven. Let's just savor all of it right now, like the last week of summer 2024. And until Tuesday, and as always, up the mighty Villa.